All right. Hello, everyone. Um, would like to welcome you all in here at ETH and at home on the YouTube stream to the talk, Developing Accessible Software. Now, if you have built a website as a hobby, you might have wondered what all these ARIA fields are for. Today, Lina Witzel and Werner Hänggi will explain to you how this works and why it is absolutely essential that you use these fields. Enjoy the talk.
Thanks a lot for the introduction. So then I will start, and I'm very thankful that I see a few of you here and hopefully also on stream for this very important topic to me. I think everyone would say that about their talk, but I think it's not important enough right now, so that's why we are here today. So first, we would like to introduce ourselves. I think I will just start first. My name is Lina, and I'm currently studying at the University of Zurich, and my major is people-oriented computing. So I was always very interested in how we humans interact with the computer. And especially then when I did my internship at Dat Novum, I met Werner, who was my co-worker in the UX team. And then I experienced how it is for people that have a disability. And I've never thought about this before, I have to admit. And then I learned a lot about this and found it very interesting and was actually quite shocked that I never heard of this before. That's why I love talking about this now and having met Werner, who could now introduce himself.
Okay, my name is Werner. I am visually impaired since birth. I studied computer science at ETH Zurich many years ago. This actually is one of the lecture halls I also sat in back then. It smells quite the same like in those years, in the 80s. And I started working as a software engineer. I worked for different companies, and I have been working for Dat Novum here in Zurich for about 18 years now. First as a software engineer, and at the start of 2018, I changed position. I became part of the UX team, where I am responsible for the accessibility topic. So it's great to be here. Thank you very much.
Okay, so this is a quick overview on what I'm going to tell you today. And first I will talk about the wish. So I think we all would like to see a world where everyone can access the digital world and would not have any problems. But then I will show you the reality, a not so accessible world right now. And there, Werner will give you a demo as well, that you see what is the reality right now. And then the way to go. How can we make it a somehow accessible world, or at best, go to the wish and have a fully accessible world. So the wish, a fully accessible digital world. What does this mean? So first, I wanted to give you some examples for types of disabilities so that you get a feeling who would need to accessible everything in the digital world. So this includes hearing impairments, for example, deaf people or just people that have difficulties to hear. And then visual impairments, this ranges from color blindness, maybe some of you are even colorblind, and then obviously to people like Werner who have a complete blindness. And then mental disabilities, which can include epilepsy, for example. So people that really have a problem with like animations that are jumping at them in the digital world, and also physical and motor disabilities. So anyone who maybe cannot use the mouse and can just use the keyboard, or the other way around, they may just have a joystick to move around. And obviously many more. So just wanted to give you a few numbers about this. So worldwide, there's around 1 billion people affected by this. They have a disability, and this is around 15% of the world, so that's quite a lot. And for Switzerland, it's more than 1.8 million people, so around 20%, so that's quite a lot too. Well, you have to say that 26% cannot live on their own, so those would probably have even more difficulties using the digital world and software. And yeah, actually those numbers are not even that important because there's much more people affected. I think what's to mention, and it's very important, people that get older, we will have a lot more people, old people that will have difficulties using the online world. And obviously, I think every one of you has been in a situation where you have used your smartphone and then you found that the font size was quite too small or the button was too small to retouch it and click it. So, and a good example too is maybe you have had a broken arm and only could use your device with one arm. So you had a situational and temporary disability. Or maybe even you had a baby and had to carry it and could just use one hand. So in the end, it kind of affects every one of us. And now the reality, how does it look like? Do all of these people have access to the digital world? First, we would need to see the legal situation, I think, in Switzerland and the EU. So in Switzerland, we have the WCAG, which makes sure that no one gets discriminated. I mean, this is a much broader law, which includes accessibility to buildings, but also to online services. And in Switzerland, all the cantons and the federal government have to make sure that their services are accessible for everyone. So what they have is the PO28, which are some guidelines that the cantons, for example, have to fulfill when they develop an online service. And this guideline is based on the WCAG, which are the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which I will talk about later a bit. And they actually also provide a checklist to make sure it's accessible for everyone. And then we have the European Accessibility Act, which is not really obligatory for Switzerland as they're not a part of the EU, but they made a very big step now that they said every online service provider should make sure their service is available by the end of 2021. So in Switzerland, the private service providers are pretty free. They don't really have any laws or obligations to provide their services for everyone. Now we can see, is this enough? Like, do people that develop those online services really adhere to these laws and obligations? And for that, I wanted to show you some output of the Access for All studies. Access for All is a foundation for people with disabilities. And like every few years, they do a study where they have a user, which is a blind user, using his laptop and fulfilling a use case. And then they will rate if the use case is achievable on that online services on their website. So they check the federal services, for example, which, as you can see, are pretty good. As I already mentioned, they are kind of obliged to make everything accessible, so that's good that they do that. And it looks a bit worse for like the very federal close companies. For example, the SBB is one of them, but SBB actually is a really good example. So they would probably have those 5 stars in the rating. And then we can move to the ones which have less obligations. For example, all the cities, cantons, and institutions of higher education. So, of course, also ETH would be included in this. And there you can see that it already looks much worse. So only half of those institutions really provide accessible services. And to that, we will now give you a demo. So Werner will now change. We chose the course catalog.
Okay, now comes the fun part.
Voiceover on Safari. Course catalog at Zurich. Window. Number. Edit. Text.
Maybe it's a bit loud. I turn it a bit down.
Decrease system volume.
So, I don't know. Perhaps first a few words about screen readers. Nowadays, screen readers are available for every major platform. This includes Mac OS, Windows, of course iOS and Android. And this has changed quite a few things over the last few years with regard to what people with disabilities can do or cannot do. And especially, I think Apple has been very influential with this regard. So they included their screen reader in their operating systems without any additional cost for the end user. And this has also been very great in the sense that other companies had to do something about this. So nowadays we have NVDA, which is an open source screen reader for Windows. We have TalkBack on Android, and of course VoiceOver and for macOS and iOS. And there is still a commercial screen reader called JAWS for Windows platforms. So what we like to do now is I will show you a short demo, and we chose the ETH course Verzeichnis. Let's just go through this demo, and I will explain on the way certain things, and at occasion Lina will jump in and also say something. So
Number.
Let's imagine I would like to choose a course for in the computer science department for this current fall semester. So what I would like to do first is I somehow would like to have an overview of this web page.
Control Option Lock On. Heading Level 3. Important information.
Yeah, I think you're already in the middle of the page.
Okay.
Heading Level 1. Search for courses. Heading Level 3. Structure. Heading Level 3. Further criteria.
No, I didn't.
Heading Level 3. Structure. Heading Level 3. Further criteria. Heading Level 3. Important information.
I have to go back, I think, a lot.
Okay.
First heading Level 1. Search for courses.
Okay.
Table. Heading Level 3. Structure.
But now I think I have to turn up the thing.
Control Option Lock Off. Increase system volume. Table. Heading Level 3. Further criteria. Table. 2 columns, 7 rows.
Now here's a table.
Heading Level 3. Table. 2. Heading Level 3. Structure. Table. 2 columns, 1 row.
Interact with this table.
New line. End of row. New line. Program. Column 2.
I think I'm already too
New tab. Button. Show/hide tab over new tab. Button. Course catalog at Zurich. Read content.
Now you're at the start. Now you are at the start.
Okay.
In. Heading Level 3. Structure.
If you just go back one table.
Table. In. Table. Autumn Semester 2020. Semester.
Okay.
Column 2.
So the semester.
Level. Row 2, column 1. New line. Level. Column 2.
Now it should
Level. Column 1.
tell me.
Level. Department. Row 3, column 1. Show/new tab.
That's probably
Button. Create vertical splitter, collapsed on left. Sidebar. Vertical splitter. Course catalog at Zurich. Banner. Link image. ETH homepage. Visited link. Navigation. Link. Print.
I think I need your help, Lina.
Link. Help. Link. Contact.
Yeah,
Visited
now you're
link.
at the very
Yeah.
start.
End of. Navigation. Visited link. Courses. Link. Lecturas. Link. Time and place. End of. Navigation. End of. Banner. Navigation.
So maybe
Visited
what
link.
I can
Start.
add right now.
End of. Navigation.
Can you just
So it's currently quite difficult for me to navigate this
Heading Level 1. Search for courses.
web page.
Table. 2 columns, 3 rows. In. Autumn Semester 2020. Semester. Column 2.
This is the semester, obviously.
Level.
Row 2, column 1.
But
Level. Heading Level 3.
Structure.
Table.
2
not
columns,
able
1 row.
to select
Heading Level 3.
Further criteria.
Table.
In.
New line.
End of row.
Programme.
Column 1. Beginning of row.
Programme.
Column 1.
New line.
Department.
Pop-up button. Table.
2 columns,
For
3
example,
rows.
Now I managed to find
Press.
New line.
Architecture. Biology.
the department.
Biosystems, chemistry, civil, computer science, earth science, computer science.
or
Press computer science. Website not secure.
Computer science. New line.
Program.
Pop-up button. Table.
2.
Menu tick.
Cause in applied information technology. Cause in computer science. Cause in cybersecurity. Cause in computer science.
Ist das gewesen?
Cause in applied information technology. Cause in computer science. Press cause in website not secure.
CAS in Computer Science. New line.
Section.
Pop-up button.
Section.
Menu tick.
Focus courses and electives. Seminars. Seminars. Focus courses and electives.
Tick.
Focus courses and electives. Press website not secure.
Focus Courses and Electives.
Section.
Pop-up button.
Title.
Edit text. Table.
Number.
Edit text.
Last name.
Edit.
First name.
Edit text. New line.
Type.
Pop-up. New line.
Language of instruction.
New line.
Periodicity.
So
Pop-up
you
button.
can here I navigate through this form.
Catalog data.
Edit text.
Without structural information.
Und Ticket. Tickbox.
And right now you're only using tab to go. So
I'm
so you
only
go
using
to
tab
unfortunately.
in order to go through this the whole thing,
Search.
Button.
and I
Search. Press.
press
Search.
search and
Wird im Semester 2020 takes place in a mixed form of online and classroom teaching.
Control option lock on.
Heading Level 1.
Search result. Course units in autumn.
and then I can jump directly to the search results.
Navigation.
Arrow dash page dash first dash grade.png.
Image.
So this is something I see quite often, that things are just marked with an icon that has no actually useful labels.
Arrow dash page dash prev dash grade.png.
Image.
So you can hear it says arrow blah 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 dot gmp
Page 1 of 2.
png.
Link Image. Next page. Link Image. Last page.
Now
Link.
there's a
Al.
proper label, I think, for the ones before. If you move back,
Link Image. Last page.
yeah, here it says explicitly last page.
Last
that's
page,
pretty
yes.
Easy to understand.
Link. Al. Course Units. Link. Catalog Data. Link. Courses.
So now I'm moving from element to element actually on the screen.
End of.
Table.
6 columns, 23 rows.
And then I interact with this table.
In.
Table. Focus Courses and Electives. Link.
Row.
Number.
Row 3, column 1.
Title.
Column 2.
Type.
Column 3.
Rechts.
Column 4.
Hours.
Column 5.
Lecturas.
Column 6.
252 02 37 00L. Concepts of Object-Oriented Programming. Link. Information. Link
So,
Image.
Column
for,
2.
For example, I would like to pick this one here.
252 Concepts of Object-Oriented Programming. Link Image. Information. Link. Concepts of Object.
Press.
Link. Concepts of Object-Oriented Programming.
So
Website not secure.
let's see whether I can find the information to this course.
Heading Level 1.
252-0237-00L Concepts of Object-Oriented Programming.
So it reads the number of the course.
Table.
2 columns, 4 rows.
Then I go into this
In.
table.
Wird im Semester 2020. Lecturas.
Row 2, column 1.
P. Müller. Link.
Column 2.
Periodicity.
Row 3, column 1.
Yearly lecturing course.
Column 2.
You also hear that the screen reader announces always the row and column numbers, so that I actually can also navigate vertically or horizontally in the table.
Language of instruction.
Row 4, column 1.
English.
Column 2. End of row.
English.
End of row.
So
In-
out
the
of.
end of
Navigation.
the table.
Catalog Data.
Then here's the
Link. Performance Assessment.
catalog data. And here now I have different things I can choose from.
Link. Learning Materials.
For example, I would like to know something about the
Link. Performance Assessment.
performance assessment. So I click on this, and this is marked with, it's actually marked with a link.
Autumn Semester 2020 takes place in a mixed form of online and classroom teaching.
So I move down.
Website not secure.
Heading Level 1.
252.
Table.
2 column.
Navigation. Link. Katalog Data. Performance Assessment.
And now I can hear performance assessment. So I'm sure I have this information
Link.
here
Learning Materials.
below.
Link. Courses. Link. Groups. Link. Restrictions. Link. Offered in. Link. Images /
End of.
Table.
2 columns, 10 rows.
Now going to this
In.
table.
Beginning of row.
Performance Assessment as a semester course.
Row 2 column 1.
Echts Credits.
Row 3 column 1.
8 Credits.
Column 2.
So
Examiners.
Row 4 column 1.
I think this gives you an impression about the difficulties I have here. First of all, the tables have no description, so I don't know what actually the table displays. There's no caption, or the table also has no name. So in order to know what's presented in the table, I have to interact with it. So this makes it quite a bit difficult. So you have to interact with every table that's displayed. Otherwise, there are some things that are already quite accessible. I think for me, it's something in between accessible and not so accessible. In order to get familiar with it, it's quite often the case that you will have to explore a website and find out by trying different things in order to get those information that you are interested in. Yes, this was a small example, and of course, there are lots of examples out there that have way more difficulties with respect to accessibility. And I think this one is very interesting because looking something up on a website is a task that many people do all the time, perhaps several times a day, and it always boils down to the same few things that aren't working or that aren't inaccessible. So here I think there's a lot of potential in order to make things a bit more accessible in the future, especially on websites that use a lot of tabular data. Tables are one of those things that quite often suffer from accessibility problems.
Yeah, maybe I can add to that again about the technical details on here, why we chose this example. I think you might have seen that it was quite well structured. They used a banner for the details above, and they used different heading levels, which is always very good. And like in the form before, Werner was able to use just the tab, so just the keyboard to go through everything, which is already good to be accessible. But on the other hand, there's still, like for example, quite a lot of navigations, which you don't know why there's so many different ones. They're not really labeled. And on this last page, I think we've seen that all the tabs down there were marked as links and you're not really implemented as tabs. So for Werner, it felt like he had a new page open when he clicked on it and started again from the start of the page. So that's something that could have been done better. So it's really an example for both sides, good and bad examples. And I think we only have little time left, so maybe you can turn off the screen again.
Voiceover off.
Oops. So yeah, maybe at the end you can give more examples if we have time. Now, as I mentioned before, now that we have seen the educational side of it, and then there's the news portals and online shops, for example, which usually are very bad implemented right now. That's also the feeling that we've got when at Adnova we tested quite a lot of those websites, and like rarely any was really accessible. I think that's because they're not really obliged to do anything about accessibility. Now, shortly, the way to go. What can we do to make everything more accessible? I think the first step would be to rethink everything. And we chose those two examples, which are actually statements considering the security. And we found they're very fitting to replace with accessibility words. So the first one is processes which show a bigger potential for security breaches should be detected and tackled early in the project. That's obviously true, but should also be true for accessibility, so that you identify the barriers very early in the process and tackle them early. And then also for frameworks, that's the same. Usually you can choose a framework that supports security quite well, and you could do the same for accessibility, actually. It won't really solve all your problems. You still would need to do some work and need to make sure that it really is accessible. In the end, you would need a user to really test it. That would be the best case. But it can obviously speed up the process and save you some effort and costs. And actually, there is quite some support out there already. As I mentioned, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, they provide you with everything you need to know, how to make buttons accessible, for example. And also ARIA, which we often saw is actually used too much. So those are actually HTML tags to make, for example, if you want to implement a button and don't use a button, but rather a div element, then you could make it accessible using ARIA, but that's not how you should do it. You should prefer using a proper button because all the semantics are already in there. So why take something and then just use ARIA to get all those semantics back? So that's not what you should do. And then what I wanted to mention, which also helped me a lot when I got into this topic, is the Accessibility Developer Guide. So these are different companies which actually put together this guide, like really on every topic you need to know about and how to make it accessible. Or also if you want to know more about how a screen reader works, you should go on there. They explain it really well. And of course, if you feel like it, you can also contribute to it. It's all open source. So that's very nice too. So we're actually at the end, and I wanted to quickly review what I just told you. So I hope that every one of you got that accessibility really affects everyone in the end, and that the current laws and policies are not really enough, especially in Switzerland and Europe. That's maybe not a better case right now, but in Switzerland, obviously not everyone adheres to it. And that there's still a long way to go, but I think we can do it. And because there is so much support, so we should just put the effort in it and rethink accessibility. So then I think we're at the Q&A. Thanks a lot for listening so far.
Okay, thank you very much for this wonderful talk and raising awareness for this very important topic. Then for the Q&A, does anyone in the room have any questions? And for those online, if you still have questions, you can post them in Slido, which the link you can find below the stream.
Thank you for the talk. So my question is actually on the voiceover demonstration you did. The data representation was a table. Is that the most optimal representation in every situation, or is there sometimes another way of representing data which would be more efficient depending on the situation?
I think tables are actually quite a quite good way to present things if they are implemented, if the markup, that the table markup is correct. So, of course, there are also other ways to represent data. Sometimes people use implement tables in a way that they which are not accessible. For example, if they don't use the scope attribute or some things like that, or other ways to represent data. I don't know. I think tables are really something that can be used quite efficiently, and I think it's also, if you perhaps would use nested tables, it's possible to do that in an accessible way. So I would like to say I think tables are actually a very good construct for representing data.
Though I think for this example that we showed, I'm actually for the form, I'm not so sure if it was the best way to do that in a table. As for a form, it's very easy to connect the labels to the input fields, and they had like the different categories, as you've seen, like the further criteria, for example, and there it would have been better to use field sets and groups, I think, instead, which you can't really do in this table. So I think maybe in this example they mustn't even use a table. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the answer. The next question comes from the internet and it's presented by our signal angel.
So there is a question. It says, first, thank you for the interesting talk. And could you please show some more examples? I'm not sure if we have time, but maybe they want to see maybe a site where the voiceover works really well and you can navigate, or a nice example.
Yes, we have 5 more minutes and I think everyone's for it. Or?
Well, we can try maybe the SBB website.
While you set up, we'll just ask another quick question.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Thank you very much for the nice talk. At the beginning, you gave them examples of different types of disabilities that you're working, like that you need to keep in mind. And one is mental disabilities. Could you give some examples? Because I think like this is like a very bright field with a very different challenges for different diagnoses. So do you have some concrete examples?
Can you repeat the last part?
So
examples.
Mental disabilities, examples, like what? Because I mean, it's a very broad field with a very different types of interactions with the page or application. Could you give some more concrete examples?
Yeah, sure. I think the one that I mentioned was epilepsy, right? And then there's obviously people that are on the spectrum, for example, with autism. This would be like a mental disability. And can you think of something else, which is quite often seen for mental disabilities, Werner? Or, yeah, otherwise, yeah, I think autism is like a very broad one. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember of anything like more specific right now. I actually don't really like have a list in my mind of all those. Sorry.
All right, in that case, I think we can continue with the demo.
Okay, so you can now turn on
screen reader. Okay.
Voiceover on Safari. SBB, AILS for IHRE Mobility at vertical line SBB.
Window.
Von Feld Hall test.
Is this already on the, or should I have to open
It's on phone, like where form. It's already in the interface.
Ah, okay, okay. So actually,
Control Option Lock On. Control Option Lock Off. Nackfullick failed whole testful. Ort.
okay,
Since we
it's,
died.
now it's turned.
Required list box pop-up, menu pop-up combo box.
The language is
Should I
in
change
German.
it to English quickly?
Okay.
Link. Masken tragen, sich und andere schützen.
Ah, okay. Watch, yeah.
Voiceover off.
Yeah, I would just quickly change it to English because voiceover, you have to also set it in German or English, so it will sound weird having it in English and reading German.
Voiceover on Safari. Swiss Federal Railways. Everything for your mobility. Vertical line SBB.
Window.
From mandatory field stop. Place. Place of interest. To mandatory field stop. From mandatory field stop. Place.
So
Place
I
of
can
interest.
just
Required list box pop-up, menu pop.
navigate from field to field, and VoiceOver actually tells me what's required of me. So
Y.
no,
Y.
I have to change.
Y. Z. U. R. I. H.
To mandatory field stop. Place. Place of interest.
B. E. R. N.
Add via.
Button.
So I have a bit difficulties understanding the VoiceOver.
Change to the previous day. Current. Show calendar.
Button.
So Lina, now we are on the.
It's on Show Calendar button.
SAT. 10. Oktober 2020. Day changed to Saturday. 10. Oktober 2020.
Okay, that's the calendar.
15:38 Uhr. Content
There.
selected. Radio Button. 1.
Search for connection.
Okay,
Button, mine.
search connection. I do that.
Press. Search for connect.
Lead Content.
So
Heading Level 1.
Navigate to sbb.ch.
now I navigate, try to find the search results.
Control Option Lock On.
Heading Level 2.
Service links.
Heading Level 2.
Menu.
Heading Level 2.
Quick links.
Heading Level 1.
6 items. Timetable from Zurich HB to Bern.
Okay, now I have here a timetable.
In.
From. Zürich HB. Image. To. Bern.
Out of.
Heading Level 2.
3 items. Search earlier connections.
Button. Standard View. Pop-up Button. Table.
11 columns, 8 rows. In.
Details.
Column 2.
Briefinformation.
Column 1.
Details.
Column 2.
Realtime-Information.
Column 3.
Duration.
Column 4.
So I navigate through, I move myself through the table.
Change Trains.
Column 5.
Okkupanzierate.
Column 6.
Travel Tips.
Column 7.
Blank.
Column 8.
Motive Stations.
Column 9.
Purchase Ticket.
Column 10.
Other options.
Column 11. Brief information. Departs on SAT, the 10th of October 2020. 3 connection details. Brief information. Row 2, column 1.
Heading Level 2.
1538 direction IRL connection details. Row 3, column 1.
So I could also here, for example, look at the connection details.
Please wait.
Yeah, and I think what you've already seen that there was quite some information which is actually not visible, but for the screen reader they implemented the description of the table.
So actually, what I usually do, I don't buy tickets via the SBB website. I usually use the SBB mobile app on my iPhone, which in my opinion works even better than the website. It's actually quite easy to find train connections and buy tickets via the mobile app. So, but I think the SBB is actually one of those websites who works quite well with screen readers. In order to buy a ticket, I think you are still much quicker using the website than going to the train station and find the ticket office and buy a ticket from there. So it's quite helpful to have this service accessible for us.
All right. Thank you very much for the second demo. Unfortunately, we are out of time since we have to air out this room for 15 minutes before the next talk. If any of you in this room still have some questions, I think you would still be available out in front of the room, so you could ask your questions there. Then I would like to thank you two for a wonderful talk with our exclusive VIScon mugs.
Oh, well, cool.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
a lot.
And Werner, on your left side.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right. Thank you very much for your wonderful talk and raising awareness, and thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks for having us again.
Thank you.